Microphone, turn on desktop. Hey everyone, we're back. Hey Lionel, thank you for joining me this week.
Always. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's difficult these days. I know that people may not realize this, but when COVID hit, it really hurt the team not being able to see each other in person as much. So, doing these live streams help. We get to see each other's faces and we get to work a little bit. It's definitely a good feeling. All right, so what are we talking about this week? This week, we're going to be digging into some of the mythological creatures in Genesis, talking about some of the more common ones that we put our own little twist on. We'll be talking about some of the ones we created from scratch that are our own. And then we'll be talking about some creatures that we borrowed directly from native lores and bring them into the game and how we made those interpretations. As always, remember that if you're watching the stream, make sure you leave a comment. Make sure you say hi. We have a few people watching today, so let us know that you're around and leave a comment with a chance to win some stuff. And I'll be announcing winners of prizes come the beginning of next month. So the first stream of next month, I'll let you know who won stuff for from November's live streams. All right, so before we jump into the topic, a few announcements. Patreon. Let me throw that up on screen. So, huge shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for all the help you've given us along the way. Sorry, I'm coughing a lot. Not that type of coughing. Different type of coughing. um,
Thanks.
so again, thank you to all our Patreon subscribers. Thank you to everyone who's helped us along this way. I put out a post recently saying, if you want to support us on Patreon, it does help a lot. But the thing I really want to see from our community on a day-to-day basis is that they are supporting us through purchasing product at their local game store. Purchase a couple of booster packs a month, a week, whatever you can do. I'd rather see the money go that way to support the local game stores so that the local game stores in the long run can be supporting us. Hey, Andrew, thank you for joining us this week. So, special shout out to Andrew, Gunther, Hill, Steven, Stevo, Nathan, and Will for being some of our top tier supporters and have really made the Patreon project go above and beyond. Thank you so much for all of that. Uh, this is also going to be. We only have a few days remaining to get your Casmodon promo from Future League. So if you want that amazing reverse art Casmodon promo card, remember you got to join Discord, join the conversation, reach out to AG Miller or myself, and ask them to add your role of Future Leaguer. And then you'll be getting your promo with either your Patreon package, or if you don't subscribe to Patreon, you'll still get it shipped to you separately.
Mm.
Uh, and then we have our town hall happening on December 7th, so not this coming Monday, but the Monday after. And that will be continuing that conversation around Future League. And then, as always, make sure you join us on Discord to continue the conversation and talk about whatever you want to talk about Genesis related. I've been seeing a lot of great conversations happening on Discord recently.
Mm.
Uh, Weird. OBS is saying that my stream has died. Is that happening on Facebook as well?
It looks like it's back up now.
Okay. If
Oh,
people notice that the stream is dying for one reason or another, make sure you reach out to me on Discord or any other way to privately PM me. But I will get that information. Make sure we get things up and going. Yeah, it looks like it's down again.
yeah, it's inconsistent.
Yeah, what's
Yeah,
happening with OBS? Yeah, it's green now. It's just jumping between green and red. It's the weirdest thing.
that's odd. Wonder if it's an internet thing.
Yeah, it might be.
Oh, internet live stream issues.
Yeah, it's always a challenge.
Yeah,
This is the problem with live streaming. You can't guarantee the strength of your internet at any given point. It's saying
exactly.
have had about 13% of the frames dropped, which is pretty large. All right. Well, thank you to anyone who stuck it through. This isn't one of our worst streams, but it is unfortunate. At least we don't have sound issues as much anymore.
Yeah, that's true. Looks like you got that figured out.
Yeah,
That's
definitely a
awesome.
huge step up. Um, so I'll leave a comment with, oh, OBS is down again. This has to be an issue with OBS because Zoom hasn't been installed at all.
That's true.
And so I left the disk there. Um, all right, well, let's just jump into the topic. It may just be us. I don't know if people are going to end up watching this because the drop rate is so high.
Yeah. Well, we can still have a great conversation and then post it afterwards. Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, I'm
That.
not recording this. I was hoping that the built-in
Oh.
systems were recording this. All right. I'll start recording now.
Okay.
All right. So there was a lot of issues happening with drop frames, a lot of issues with this video as a whole. We're going to continue trying to live stream it. Hopefully, it works to some degree. But if it doesn't, I'm recording this as of now, and I'll post this video up onto YouTube later on. And so, what we're talking about this week, we're going to be talking about some of the mythological creatures in Genesis. This probably is just going to be a conversation between me and Lionel, and it'll be a lot of fun because I think a lot of it will be me probing him to see how much he knows about the lore we made in this game of ours.
I feel like I'm in an exam.
Yeah. Well, isn't every live stream kind of like this, where I just
Oh,
ask you a bunch of questions? It's a lot of interviewing you, seeing how much you know about the game. So let's talk about some of the mythological creatures. I think the category kind of breaks into. I want to say there's a fourth group here. So we have one group of creatures that are established creature types that we've put our own spin on them. Then there is brand new creature types that we've made. Then we have some catch-all creatures. Like we have catch-all abilities for spells and techniques. We also have catch-all creatures, creature types. And then we also have not directly namespace creatures, but the idea of like this is a particular type of creature from a given lore that we've brought into our game and tried to pay respects to as much as we can. So let's talk about some of these creatures that we put our own twists on. Why don't you talk a little bit about Nagas? Nagas are, I think, a bit of a pet project of yours in this game.
Yeah. So the realm of Genesis comes from the Hindu. Sorry, Hindu
No,
mythology.
not Hindu.
Oh, okay.
The Nagas we have are from Taiwanese and the Oriental. That's why they're in Ajna, not in Sahas.
Right. Okay, that's true. I think that was a part of my confusion at the start too. But yeah, and they're essentially snake-like creatures that we depicted, and like the long tail and that kind of thing.
Yeah, but so Nagas that we normally see in video games, how would you describe? What's the big difference between those and the ones we use?
Well, the ones that I'm the most familiar with are the ones from my time when I was playing World of Warcraft.
Okay.
There were more humanoid versions of them. They still had the snake-like tails, but their upper body were more humanoid, and like they had like defined faces and arms and could wield weapons, and they're a lot less serpent-like than the ones in the original lore.
I'll actually bring this on top of us because on our screen we actually have a Naga here. So when looking at this Naga, I have Draconius Naga up on the screen. The thing to kind of note is that, but yeah, so in European mythology, you have the upper half is a body of a human, and the lower half is the body of a snake. But in this Oriental Taiwanese type of culture, Nagas are more sea creatures. And part of the reason we wanted to do that is we wanted to explore the non-European mythologies a lot more when it comes to different creature types. And so that's some of that. I mean, how much of that did you know? Did you personally know about why we chose the Nagas that we chose?
Personally, I didn't actually totally understand the intention for it,
Yeah,
but I knew that we wanted that, or that your choice to choose Naga came from the fact that we wanted to show that lore,
yeah,
and show how it was originally portrayed.
yeah.
So, um, yeah, and for a while it took me some time to get my head around it, because like I was used to the European version of it, as are most people, because that's
Hmm.
what in most popular cultures.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's kind of the big part of it is that most games focus on the European lore when it comes to the way they portray creatures. When we look at things like
Hmm.
vampires, witches, nagas, or zombies and skeletons,
Hmm.
uh, everyone kind of leans upon the European and, in a lot of spaces, the American Hollywood interpretation of how those creatures look like. So
Hmm.
it's when designing Genesis, you know this, is that we looked a lot more at the African lore, the Egyptian lore, Indian lores, and the Oriental lores. So
Yeah.
when wanting to bring a Naga into the game, we can't just bring in a Naga the way you would anywhere else. Um,
Yep.
Even when it came to something like bringing in the jinns, jinns were like when you think of jinns, you think of genies, you think of something like Aladdin, or you think of the interpretations of jinns from Supernatural. Um, those are all European reinterpretations of the jinn. Do you know where the jinn actually comes from?
The gender originally came from the Hindu mythology,
Nope,
correct?
nope, nope. It comes from the Quran.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
Okay.
the Quran sees. It's really interesting when you dig into the lore of it because the Quran kind of splits the viewpoints of people are broken down into, how do you explain it? There are three types of creatures that are in the world. You have humans, jinns, and angels. And angels are created from Allah and are divine beings. And jinns are created through evil. And Shaitan, Satan, is a jinn, an angel that turned into a jinn. And jinns are
Huh.
people who have strayed away from God. So the one interpretation, and this is the one that I like a lot, is that when humans were brought religion and were told that there was a God, some of them decided to believe in God and became righteous and became humans. And
Mhm.
those who turned their back away from God became jinns. And
And they
that's,
essentially became the humans became our predecessors, our
yeah,
ancestors.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
The
the people
original.
who passed down religion to Judaism, to Christianity, and to Islam, this line of the Abrahamic religions, those are, the humans, the people who seek righteous attributes, and then those who strayed away became jinns, and that's why, like, the whole entire genie in a bottle type of thing, it came from
Yeah.
Arabian Nights. It doesn't come from the actual mythology of
Right.
jinns. So
That makes sense.
that's a whole other thing. So we have some Islamic mythology when we talk about the jinns. We have some of the Taiwanese mythology when we talk about Nagas. We
Hmm.
have the Egyptian mythology when we talk about Sphinx.
Thanks.
Did
Yeah.
you design any of the Sphinx?
I don't believe any of the Sphinx were mine.
Yeah,
No,
I know.
I never got a chance to delve into that.
Yeah, I know. Carl ended up designing Stone Protector of Nye, and it
Hmm.
was a complete joke, which was just how do we bring the TARDIS into Genesis?
Yeah,
And
it was a lot of fun.
I think we did a pretty good job at that. It's definitely one of the more powerful 5G summons out there.
For sure. Yeah.
And then Vadhe Sphinx. Um,
Hmm.
it's on the lower end, but it's one of those creatures you actually see again in Weighted Net as a little, like, nod towards what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and then golems. You did Blackstone Golem.
Yeah. I did Blackstone
Um,
Golem.
do you remember the
Blackstone Golem.
research behind Blackstone Golem?
Oh, it's been some time. Um, Blackstone Golem. They're essentially they're just pretty much animated objects. Am I correct?
So
And that
do you know the history of a golem? Do you know where the golems come from?
I haven't done.
This
I
is a
feel so
lot
bad
more of
about
me
speaking about this
teaching you.
because, like, I no, yeah, I know, but still, I remember doing all like knowing a lot about it back
Yeah.
back when we first released it, but that was about what is it, about 2 years ago or a year ago? No. Anyways,
Yeah.
yeah, that we did the research, but anyways, continue.
So golems come from Jewish mythologies, right? And so it
Okay.
comes from the Torah and the idea golem. And those who watch this later, feel free to leave a comment and correct me on things. But my understanding when it comes to the golem, it was created as a protector for the Jewish people. And it's made out of clay, and there's a scroll that you put inside of its mouth, and whoever puts a scroll inside of its mouth controls the golem, and the golem is supposed to be this all-powerful warrior that will help defend the Jewish people in dark times. So that's where the golem mythology, and then we wanted one to put under Vadhis. Vadhis being one of those, being semi-loosely based around Egypt. We brought in the Jewish mythology because a lot of Judaism comes from well, it comes from a lot of places, but like there's a lot of that influence in Egypt, and wanting to bring in a creature that kind of had a holy protector value. Now let's see if you remember this. Do you remember why we chose Blackstone? No.
No, I don't.
So a lot of religions base
I'm too
around.
terribly on this.
It's okay. It's okay. I love ranting about this stuff. So a lot of religions have this idea that there's a holy rock, some sort of rock, crystal, something that is imbued with a lot of holy power, and usually it's so there's actually, if you know, in Islam, we pray towards Mecca, right? And in Mecca there is a piece of meteorite, and it's actually inside this black tomb, and we pray towards that, and it has a lot of holy power. Now
I always wondered that.
yeah, on Earth there's a lot of there isn't a lot of meteorite rock, but there is another rock that looks very similar, and people believe that that is holy as well. I'll put you on the spot again. Do you know what that rock is? Can you guess it? Nope.
No, unfortunately.
It's onyx.
Oh,
Onyx is a black stone.
Huh.
And a lot of people attribute a lot of holy or divine or protective power to onyx. So onyx is a black stone imbued with a lot of power, and then you have a black stone golem.
That's awesome. That's cool. I actually don't even remember you going through that entire lore with me back when it was created.
No, that's a thing. All right, and then we can dig into some of these you definitely know about because we've talked about them a lot. But there are two creature types that in most games people love. People love these creatures in every game. And they're the angels and the dragons.
Yeah.
People love their angels and dragons. Giant winged creatures. They just look awesome everywhere.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your perspective on dragons in Genesis? Do you know the lore behind the dragons in Genesis?
The lore behind the dragons in Genesis. Well, they weren't. They're a lot more rare of creature. Okay, you go ahead and talk about this because my information is not very good right now.
All right, so you're going to play the role of audience in this recording and ask me questions of things. So let's talk about the dragons. The dragons in Genesis are, you're right, they were very rare. Basically, when the universe was first created, 5 ancient creatures, Bellum, Thymos, Axon, Chaos, and Phage, right? Yeah. And each one, the 5 of them came together to create one perfect world, which they called Jalara. And each one imbued the world with different attributes. And not to spoil too much for future, people who read the story in the future, but each one imbued the world with different attributes. And one of them decided, I'm going to imbue the world with dragons, because he wanted to create creatures that were closer to his image of who he was. So he created these dragon creatures. Then there was this epic war that happened, and during that war, the war ended with the five ancient ones being trapped away for all eternity. And that left the world with a few of these dragons who, over time, either died through age or were murdered and things like that. So when we get to Genesis, when we got to Welcome to Jalara as a set, there's only one dragon that still remains in the world, and that's the one in Ajna. And if anyone knows Long's backstory, you know that Long ends up infusing the blood of the dragon into himself, and that's where he becomes half human, half dragon. So the dragons are very rare creatures that don't show up a lot in the world, and yeah,
and that's depicted through his scales, correct?
Yeah. So you have the scales show up. Even the cavern that you see in the background of Long's artwork is supposed to be the dragon's cavern. So that's one. The Phoenix, on the other hand, that we know from Fong's storyline, there was only one. There's only ever one. And it was actually, its life force was bounded to the other dragon, the one that Long got his powers from. So when Long ended up killing the Phoenix to save his sister, he ended up killing the dragon to balance out the world. And he becomes the legacy of the dragon, and Fong becomes the legacy of the Phoenix, fulfilling those destinies for as long as they live.
Was there a reason why the Phoenix was bounded to the dragon in the first place?
So in Chinese mythology, there is this concept of harmony, balance, yin and yang, right? And the Phoenix and dragon are used a lot to represent that balance. And I mean, I'm sure my wife could explain this a little bit better in detail, but my understanding, there's also this, you also see the Phoenix shown in balance during weddings. So if you ever go to a Chinese wedding, you'll see this symbol of the Phoenix and dragon kind of intertwined with each other. So that's cool. Where that comes from. Fong and Long are supposed to be that balance in the world. And at the end of the day, both of them are driving for the same end result, which is they're trying to deliver peace to the world. So that's dragons. And then angels. Angels are an interesting twist in our world. Anyone who ends up reading the Akashic Codex will know this more and more, but I like putting little twists on things that in regular mythology are viewed one way. I like putting a whole other twist on them. So I won't dig into this too much because it gets revealed, and if you haven't really figured it out yet, you have a lot of things to enjoy. But just know that the angels aren't what they seem in Genesis. They definitely aren't. Yeah. And then we have one Kraken. We have the Primordial Force. Do you remember what the Primordial Force was originally called?
The Ancient Evil?
Yeah.
Or is that what you're talking about?
Yep. Do you remember how far back the Ancient Evil goes? When did I first make it?
It was in Origins. It was pre-Genesis that was Ancient
Pre-Origins.
Oh, it was before Origins too.
Yep.
What was before Origins?
Do you remember?
We didn't have a name for it. I don't remember it, no.
So the Ancient Evil came out back in 2002. I want to say 2003, when we were designing the card game that was more or less just a spin-off of Yu-Gi-Oh! It followed a lot of the premises that Yu-Gi-Oh! Had, and we had our own little twist to it. And we had the concept of bodyguards. Before we had champions, we had bodyguards. Remember that? So it was the one big creature you started the game with, and we needed a big creature that counteracted the bodyguards. So I made the Ancient Evil. So he's been around since the very beginning. Will we see another Kraken? I'm highly doubting it. Will we see a Kraken that's more like natural Krakens look like? I'm also highly doubting that.
But
So
we'll have to see what the future holds.
yeah, exactly. So it looks like the stream's up and going a little bit stronger right now. Oh, it's still dropping randomly.
Okay.
Um, yeah, it just went down to,
Yeah.
it just dropped a bunch of frames.
It's
So
odd because I'm running it on Twitch fine, but
yeah,
Facebook's not running fine.
if people are watching this, please leave comments. Let us know. I'm not seeing any comments or any stream messages. Excuse me. If you're on Twitch, if you're watching on Twitch, try leaving a comment, Lionel, and see if
Okay.
it goes through on my end, because it could be that just my system isn't seeing it. Yeah, I'm not seeing any comments on Facebook either. All right, yeah, I got that message. All right, so
Okay.
continuing on. Do you know what some of our catch-all creature types are?
Yeah. Well, one of them is hounds. That's a pretty common.
Yeah. If we don't know what something's gonna be, we can turn it into a hound pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
But we have one that's a much more generic catch-all.
Much more generic. I should really get this one. More generic than a hound. Interesting.
Yeah. It's mainly in chaos, I'll give you that.
Okay. Creature types in chaos. No. Okay. Go ahead and spoil it.
Fiends.
Fiends, right. That's definitely a catch-all.
A lot of times, if we don't know how to specify a particular creature in chaos, we'll just call it a fiend. Death's Companion is a fiend. Core is a fiend.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that if we don't know what to write it as, we just generically call it a fiend. And
fiends are. I had some issues with my on my phone. Could you just repeat the question?
Oh, so we have one creature type that is actually unique to the game, but at the same time isn't a completely unique thing. So
yeah,
you know what that is? It hit you?
Of course. The Reki, of course.
The Reki?
The creature type that you made.
So do you know what a Reki is, or what the Reki is?
Yeah, so from what I understand, Rekis are just creatures that were complete energy of one type. So, for instance, Chrono Walker is a creature made of time energy, a Reki made of time energy. And what was the other one?
Alim.
Alim, yes. Alim was a creature made of thought energy. So they don't necessarily have a complete corporeal form.
Yeah.
That's why they're kind of, you see a lot of swirls and elements into the art of the creatures. But yeah, those are mainly what I understand Rekis are.
Yeah. So do you know what Rekis are in the real world?
I actually didn't know that they were a real thing. I thought that they were completely your IP.
Nope. So I have the Wikipedia entry right in front of me.
Okay.
So Reki is a Japanese form of alternative medicine called energy healing. Reki practitioners use a technique called palm healing or hands-on healing, through which a universal energy is said to be transferred through the palms of the practitioner to the patient in order to encourage emotional or physical healing. So that's
crazy.
What Reki, that's where the idea originally came from, was this healing energy. And then I kind of took that and combined it with the idea of the Infinity Stones from Marvel Universe, of like, the Infinity Stones are supposed to represent pure absolute energy of a particular type. So you have the Time Stone, the Reality Stone. So combining those two things together of like, this is energy that can be harvested and focused and used in particular aspects from the person who's beckoning the summit, and then making them these absolute power sources. So, like you said, Chrono Walker is time energy, Alim being knowledge energy, more knowledge focused.
Okay.
And the concept of Alim, I think it's not directly, but it's closely related to one of the attributes of Allah. So that's where that name comes from. But yeah, Rekis are one of those things.
So on the lines of talking about Rekis, is there a type of Reki that you absolutely want to create? Or you just had the creature type and you look at wherever we can fit it?
So Reki, I always just designed it. The first one was always kind of a picked one, which was Chrono Walker, the time
Mhm.
energy. Um, I don't know other things. I'd like to see them start branching out to other affiliations, like using
Mhm.
chaos, using Thymos for like maybe. Um,
Life energies or something like that.
you can have life energy. You can have pure anger as Reki.
Mm.
You can have pure compassion or any of those
That'd be
emotions.
pretty. That'd be
Um,
pretty cool to have that complete emotion
yeah, and
in the
then
creature.
you could also have them under Bellum and things like pure belief or pure combat power. Like these other concepts, these other attributes that we give to each other, and then turn those into pure Rekis.
Hmm.
So there is actually a third Reki. You should know this because it's one of your creatures.
Mm. Reki that I put into mind. What? Okay, enlighten me. Which creature was it?
Yamaraja.
Duh. One of my favorite creatures, obviously.
Yep, Yamaraja. It
Um,
was supposed to be
yeah,
pure death energy.
death energy. Yeah,
So it is a Reki. Um,
yeah, that's right.
all right, so that gives us into transition into creatures that we borrowed from other mythology. Two of these being
Mhm.
yours. So talk to
Yeah,
us about Yamaduta and Yamaraja.
yeah. So Yamaraja was the Lord of Death and Lord of Death and no, what was the other one? Either way, and it was originally Yama. If you didn't know, Yamaraja was originally named Thanatos, but it had to be renamed because it didn't fit within the lore of the game. It was I think Thanatos was from mythology, so we ended up switching it into the Hindu side, and that's where the name came from. And again, it was the Lord of Death, and it was charged with looking over all of the dead, and Yamadutas were its agent, were Yamaraja's agent. So what they would do is when something would die, when a person would die, these Yamadutas would come and visit the soul of the deceased and tell them that they were dead, and then take them to be seen by Yamaraja. So yeah, that's which is kind of the nice connection between the two. Correct me if I'm wrong, because
Nope,
maybe
no,
I could be wrong.
that's more or less right. So the one thing I want to bring into, so we talked about Yamadutas being agents, where you can have multiple Yamadutas.
Mm-hmm.
But how does this play into the fact that is there Yamaraja in mythology? How does that work into our philosophy of summons in Genesis?
Yeah. So, correct me if I'm mistaken, but from what I understand, there is only one Yamaraja in the lore of Hinduism. Is that correct?
That's
From
what I'm
what you
seeing
know?
here. I have the Wikipedia
Yeah.
open just to make sure what we say is correct.
Yeah.
It looks
That's
like
good.
it was a single entity. So, talk
Mm-hmm.
like how do you feel about the fact that we put Yamaraja into the game when we made such big complaints about Sky being a named creature, and then we put in Yamaraja, who's also now a named creature.
Yeah. So with the introduction of Yamaraja, the I believe I remember having a conversation, and then it was a conflicted point back at that point too, but we ended up deciding to put it in. Maybe you could help me out a little bit on this. For me, I feel like it would, like very specific positions, like whenever you deal with more ancient type creatures, like the ancient evil or the Yamaraja in this scenario, um, there can be creative decisions made to put those kind of one-offs in. But I don't know. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
I think, yeah, that's part of it. Like when you're creating your own world, at times you want to be bounded to particular rules, and other times you don't, and you want creative liberty. In our world, the Yamaraja could be seen as a single entity, but in another world, there could be several of them, or
Mm-hmm.
like it's kind of like the way we see death. In some
Yeah.
mythologies, death is looked at as a single reaper type of character. And
Hmm.
other lores, other mythologies, you look at reapers as an entire race of creatures. And in this way, we can see them in
Hmm.
the same regards, where in our world, there may only need to be one Yamaraja to deal with what's happening in our universe, our world.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
in the universe of Jalara, there could be several of them, and each one is
Hmm.
there's just so much chaos or so much death, or for one reason or another, there needs to be an not an army of them, but a plethora of them.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that comes to mind is, how does the beckoning mechanic work in Genesis? Well, the idea is, and you could take this directly from the way you play the game. For someone to beckon a creature, they need to think of the creature, so they have the thought of that creature in their hand. You need to think of the
Hmm.
creature, and then you need to expend some of your aura to take your thought and turn it into reality. But I can think of the same thing over and over and over again. That's why you can have multiple Jalarian hounds, because you've only seen it once, but that thought lingers on, and you can constantly think about it and bring up
Yeah.
more and more. And it's the same thing we saw as Zambar Dragon. The world, as we know it in Genesis right now, has been void of dragons. Like, all dragons have died. But yet, we can beckon Zambar dragons. Well, that's because someone has seen a dragon, or a champion has seen a dragon, and that memory of how the dragon looks like has carried on in his thoughts. Hey, we lost your video.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
um, but the thought of that dragon has carried on, and for that reason, they're now able to bring out more dragons. They're able to continue that thought process and
Hmm.
conjure up their own vision of what a dragon looks like. So even
Hmm.
the dragon we have that long killed may not look like a Zamber dragon, because Zamber dragons have 4 arms, but it's just the
Hmm.
idea that you just need to think of it once. So in the same regard, someone on our planet having the image of how the Grim Reaper looks like, if they had access to the aura, they'd be able to take that thought and beckon multiple
Make it
Grim
into.
Reapers.
Yeah.
Although the oldest form can be traced to Persia as Lulu Kokore. He is as old as Father Time himself, and just as experienced and intelligent. Lulu Kokore is just this idea of the boogeyman, the pure threat, and the idea with the card itself was, just like the boogeyman, if you can summon the courage to face it head on, then it just disappears. It's no longer a threat. But if you can't find that courage, then it's going to constantly hunt you down and harm you. So that's where the ultra medium ability kind of comes in. Hey, it looks like your video has froze. Oh, looks like we lost Lionel a little bit. This is unfortunate. Yep, oh, we're gone. All right, so I'll just wrap this up on my own then. Um, so that's the idea where Lulu Kokori comes from. And that's where the